Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. I have taken the Skaven in this online replay, and we're fighting up against the High Elves, so definitely in for a good time. And this build really, in my opinion, epitomizes what Skaven's all about. We've got some Clan Pestilence, we've got Clan Scryer, Clan Molder, Clan Eshin, everyone working together, and of course, lots and lots of Skaven slaves. So, what makes Skaven fodder in particular much better than other factions' fodder? Well, zombies are pretty good. They cause fear, and of course, being undead, they only crumble. Peasant mobs are literally dirt cheap, but Skaven slaves come in two varieties which are very, very useful. We've got Skaven slave spears, which have a minor anti-large bonus of 6, which is, pretty pitiful. Their stats in general are just absolutely poor in every way, but that tiny anti-large bonus is pretty nice. Anti-large bonus is magic against appropriate units. It basically counts as armor piercing and is very, very useful. They also come in very high numbers at 135 unit models, so they can really tar pit high-value units. The other super, super useful variant is the Skaven Slave Slingers. At 105 unit models, there's a ton of volume of fire. Granted, their missile damage is absolutely pitiful, but, I mean, they do have 1 armor-piercing missile damage, so, if a single, model connects that does 1 armor-piercing damage, right? Well, if 105 models connect, that's 105 armor-piercing damage. Suddenly, it's not so bad. You see how this kind of goes? Volume of fire is a concept that you guys, if you've watched my channel for a while, you'll be very familiar with. But basically, this is why I'm a big fan of units like Free Company Militia, Goblin Archers, and so on. If you have a lot of units firing, even if you don't have a lot of armor-piercing damage, you can still do nice damage to armored units, and you'll do massive damage to lightly armored units, just because of the sheer volume of fire coming off. And the Skaven very much epitomize that with their Skaven slaves with slingers, and of course the spears we discussed. We've also got in the front here some Plague Monks and Death Runners, which is a really nice combination. The Plague Monks will sunder armor, and then, the Death Runners sunder armor, which allows the Plague Monks to trade much more effectively. We've also got 2 Poison Wind Globadiers. These guys are absolutely essential in almost every matchup. They have huge anti-large missile and armor-piercing magic damage. Lots to like about these guys, but very, very useful units. Of course, the Warlord is on a Bonebreaker, giving him some pretty nice weapon strength, frenzy, some other nice characteristics. We've got 2 units of Rat Ogres, Plague Priest with just Wither for some extra armor sundering. He's also got an armor piercing attack and has the Contaminated trait, which gives -10 leadership to anyone he hits in melee, which can be potentially useful. You don't really want to be throwing him into combat too much, but in a late game scenario can be very nice. We also have 2 units of Gutter Runners with Poison. These guys are one of the best units on the Skaven roster, definitely. Between the Snare Nets, which is a 24% speed debuff, and 24% charge speed, which is huge. Charge speed is not very often something you'll see debuffed, so the fact that this debuffs it is very important. If you combine that with the fact that they have poison missile attacks and poison melee attacks, they can tar pit units and bring their speed down by 48%, and it's absolutely brutal. Like right here, I'm kiting away these Tyrnok Chariots, which are a very nice pick against the Skaven, but they're being debuffed now by both the poison and the snare nets. You can see their speed's down to 44, so the Gutter Runners, their speed being debuffed slightly from the strength in numbers at the moment. They're still at 48, so they can pretty well outrun this Tyrnok Chariot. It has hit its charge speed now, so it does look like it's going to catch them a little bit here, but you can see how these guys can effectively kite around chariots, other large units, and they're very, very useful in general. We've also got a Warp Lightning Cannon, which has already opened up shots and doing some nice damage already. Although it's not necessarily anti-infantry, it can be pressed into that role. One thing you do have to be careful, and something I pointed out before, is these things have very large unit models, so the artillery pieces are somewhat easy to destroy compared to other artillery, units. So something to be aware of, but they're very good artillery in a lot of different roles. That's pretty much it for my build. For my opponent's build, he's got 3 spearmen up front, backed up by 3 Lothern Seaguard. I'm not a huge fan of Seaguard against Skaven, but they can be potentially useful against things like Doom Wheels, you know, Hell Pit Abominations, things like that. And Hell Pit Abominations are definitely a strong unit, and as are Rat Ogres and, you know, Doom Wheels, so definitely understand the pick. He's also got Teclis with Nets of Amantok. Looks like, let's see, he's got Flock of Doom, Regrowth, so fairly standard loadout. He also has a unit of Dragon Princes and a unit of Illyrian Reaver Archers here with the Tyrannok Chariot. And on the other flank, he has the same, except instead of a Tyrannok Chariot, he's got a Noble up on an Eagle. So very good stuff. Let's go ahead and kick things into full gear and watch what happens. So my plan is just to sit back, use the artillery, and kind of force my opponent into this very unfavorable position. Although these spearmen do have 40 armor and a very nice missile block chance with their large shields, they will start to take a lot of damage if they stand in range of these Skaven Slave Slingers for too long, so I'm just going to sit back and wait for it to happen. Meanwhile, over on this flank, my opponent getting a very nice net in what was otherwise a very unfavorable situation for him. It's going to allow him to get a really nice charge with these Dragon Princes. Despite their charge speed being debuffed, they're going to get in here and do some really, really nice work. I'm going to commit some more forces over to this side. You can see I've brought around my Rat Ogres and my Warlord. We're going to be charging downhill, and with the Snare Nets now and the Poison, these Dragon Princes are not going to be able to get away, and they are going to take quite a bit of damage here. They're definitely in a rough spot. Teclis is shortly dropping a Regrowth. You can see the health symbol going down there. So that is going to give them physical resistance and heal them. They've only lost a couple unit models there, so they probably will be able to squeak away with most of their unit models. I did not see these guys emerging from the forest here, so my opponent is going to get in on this side and kind of get into the chicken coop. But that being said, you know, I've got this cannon saturated right on top of some Skaven Slave Spears. I've got Skaven Slave Spears all over the place. The Skaven Slave Slingers are opening up shots, shooting downhill into these spearmen, and you can see the Globadiers firing at the Noble as he flies by. The Noble's going to come down and get involved in this fight over here and try and snipe out my Warlord, which is a good play. However, all these Rat Ogres are really going to aggressively start circle beating him here. You can see Teclis dropping another Nets of Amantok there. Very, very good stuff. Pinning these Skaven Slave Spears in place, who are otherwise really bogging down these Dragon Princes. And honestly, if these guys kill one Dragon Prince, I'm happy about that with how dirt cheap they are. So, very nice Flock of Doom there, a fiery Ring of Cain also going off there. Going to be very, very nice. I was a little bit sick of sitting back, so I'm just going to charge downhill with my Death Runners and Plague Monks. I can fairly easily win this infantry engagement, so no reason not to just charge in and finish off the Spearmen while I can. Meanwhile, my opponent has gotten in on this flank, but you can see these Dragon Princes are going to be bogged down pretty heavily in all these Skaven Slaves here. And the Illyrian Reaver Archers as well charged in. They did get on one of my units of Globadiers, but the other unit of Globadiers firing from a commanding position on the hill, going to be doing some excellent damage. You can see already Dragon Prince is starting to drop unit models, and the Globadiers are such an important unit for the Skaven in pretty much every matchup. And you can see the pure volume of fire coming off these Skaven Slave Slingers is really doing quite a bit of damage. Between that and the Warp Lightning Cannon, the Warp Lightning Cannon is temporarily offline, but we're going to be able to remount it here shortly. The Wither as well was helping to tear away the armor of these Dragon Princes and help the Skaven Slaves and other units in here do a bit more damage. So very good stuff. Meanwhile, over on this flank, Teclis has somehow routed off my Lord. He took quite a bit of damage, was able to kill that Noble, but now him and this unit of Rat Ogres here is regrouping. They have a pretty favorable matchup in melee against the Illyrian Reaver Archers, but I'm going to have to be careful. I do believe, let's see, did he bring the Sword of Teclis? I believe, yes he did. So, okay, so that's how he was able to beat down that Warlord. Man, you got to be careful. When he's got that thing up, he's definitely a beast in melee, but Teclis now supporting over here with these Illyrian Reaver Archers. Honestly, he's probably going to be able to kill my Warlord if that Sword of Teclis gets back up, but right now it's not up, and he's going to be losing pretty decisively to this Warlord. The Illyrian Reaver is pulling away now, so he doesn't have any support here, and the Rat Ogres are also collapsing. He needs to be very, very careful, but looks like the Dragon Princes are coming to try and bail him out here. We're trying to bog him down a little bit with these Gutter Runners, but they're now routing off, sending over the Death Runners as well. They also have the Snare Nets, so they can debuff speeds somewhat. They don't have the ranged attacks, so they don't have, you know, the poison. But the Weeping Blade will be very, very nice against the Dragon Princes if I can get them in there. Looks like right now I've caught the Illyrian Reaver Archers, so that's at least a good play. Meanwhile, the Dragon Princes that had compromised the backline still charging around somewhat, but getting very, very low at this point. And the Poison Wind Globadiers having paid themselves off completely. I mean, these guys are 650, so 2 of them on 1 unit of Dragon Princes is an even trade, so definitely paying themselves off. We were able to decisively win in this frontline infantry engagement. You can see the Warp Lightning Cannon just firing away as it's been remounted, but my opponent's doing a very, very good job of continuing to ping-pong around with these cavalry that are still alive. Teclis is still alive as well, so I'm not completely out of this yet. You can see my Warlord unfortunately getting netted and circle beaten by these Dragon Princes here. The last of his bodyguards is going to die, and he's probably going to die in here as well, so rough time for the Skaven Warlord, but never fear. The Plague Priest is here to hold morale together, and, you know, who's to say this Plague Priest didn't plan that whole thing? I'm sure he did. And he also planned this, getting run over by the Illyrian Reaver archers, who are once again compromising the cannon, doing a very good job of just being annoying and, you know, trying to take down whatever high-value units I have left. But at this point, these unit of Skaven Slave Spears is nearby. They're going to get in here and try and spring this cannon crew free. And although their melee stats are absolutely pitiful, again, the point of diminishing returns, even if, you know, 5% of their attacks are making contact, then even still, they've got a 6 anti-large bonus, and, you know, eventually the law of large numbers is going to work against you in that kind of situation. So, very good stuff. You can see the Skaven Slave Singers have also taken quite a bit of damage, but expended most of their ammunition, and at this point, it's mostly just a mop-up operation on the High Elves. Teclis still lurking over here on the forest. He's going to have to be careful, though, as he has strayed in range of these Poison Wind Globadiers, so we're going to get a couple volleys. Only a couple making contact there, but it won't take much to take Teclis down with the Globadiers, so this other unit of Dragon Princes as well, absolutely mowing down those Plague Monks on the far side. They're definitely going to finish these guys off, and man, Dragon Princes are a great looking unit. They're pretty good against the Skaven as well. You just really have to be careful of the Globadiers, of course, because the magic damage goes right through physical resistance, and the huge anti-large armor piercing. It's pretty much a hard counter to Dragon Princes, so and in a Skaven army with the numbers that I was able to bring here, it's going to be hard for a traditional cavalry unit to really compromise the back line. And because of the way I had my Globadiers deployed, you know, kind of one here, I was able to kind of crossfire, and because he wasn't able to compromise both at the same time, you know, we were able to just kind of ping-pong back and forth and see these guys off. We're just trying to mop them up at this point. The Plague Priest is getting bowled over, but, you know, he's never fear. He's gonna give all the glory to the Horned Rat here as he gets run over again. Oh man, so pitiful. But Skaven Slaves will hopefully finish off these Illyrian Reavers here. If not, the Globadiers are nearby. Very nice charge here from these Dragon Princes, but the Globes are on station. Gonna be tossing into the side here. And yeah, that's pretty much gonna be it. Another Wither coming down. I honestly didn't use Wither too much here, but it's a very useful spell. If my opponent had potentially brought, say, like White Lions or Sword Masters, it would have really helped my Plague Monks in that fight. So that's kind of the reason I bring it. Even like Skaven Slave Spears up against Dragon Princes, it'll do okay helping them there. It's not going to do a lot, but, you know, any time you can tear off a lot of armor on a high value unit, it helps them just trade so much less effectively. So for myself, the Warp Lightning Cannon getting 115 kills, it absolutely wrecked on all those infantry as they approached, and I think that was a big part of my success here. Another big part was being able to catch the one unit of Dragon Princes on the far side. You can see they did get 119 kills, but most of those were on Skaven Slaves. They did pretty much take out those Gutter Runners, but the Gutter Runners did their job of kind of bogging them down and allowing the Rat Ogres and the Warlord to really get in there and do some work. The Globadiers as well, doing some really nice damage, taking down those Dragon Princes. So, Skaven Slave Slingers, you know, 34 kills against High Elves for a unit that costs 200 points is amazing. I cannot stress enough how much I like these guys. Even if you just park them out front and let them soak a charge, I mean, they're really only 200 points. So, very, very cheap for what you invest in them. And the front line of Death Runners and Plague Monks doing very well for the most part, except for this one unit that got pretty much flattened by Dragon Princes. So, for my opponent, both the units of Dragon Princes racking up quite a few kills, one getting 220, but again, most of those coming against Skaven Slaves. This one is the one that kind of got into the back lines and was able to flatten that unit of Plague Monks and do some really nice damage. The Spearmen just getting completely outclassed there in the front line between the fire from the Skaven Slaves and, you know, the Death Runners and Plague Monks. And yeah, my opponent, this is one of the issues that the High Elves are going to face against the Skaven, is they just really can't bring the numbers to deal with something like this. I mean, if my opponent had brought more Tyrannok chariots, like personally I would have just cut the Illyrian Reaver archers and brought more Tyrannok chariots, maybe downgrade these Dragon Princes to Silver Helms just to save a bit more on cash, and maybe bring a couple units of White Lions. I mean, granted, I had some nice counters to White Lions, but they're a bit better in an infantry-on-infantry engagement than Spearmen. So, just some thoughts. I like the pick of Teclis, though. My opponent did some very nice play with that Nets Famine Talk and the Regrowth as well. Noble kind of getting beat down by Rat Ogres was unfortunate, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. I sure enjoyed playing it. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day. Mortal Empires is just around the corner, so stay tuned for that. Once that releases, I'm going to be doing a lot of unit testing and trying to get a feel for these different matchups because, of course, there's going to be how many different factions, you know, and the game's just going to get so much more dynamic. So I'm really looking forward to testing out like the Beastmen and the Wood Elves and really properly testing out Chaos and Bretonia and so on. It's going to be a good time, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.